Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Big West Mafia Show, part of the College Football Mafia. Thank you to our subscribers and channel members and everyone out there joined us tonight. You can follow all of our shows and other contributors. I'm going to run the banners across the bottom. We do this show every single Monday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, and we're rolling into the off season, so I think we can get to a little more fun and entertaining content as it comes, over the summer. I'm your host, Sergeant Pickles, and with me, as always, is the excellent Becky Go Huskies. How we doing, Becky?
Doing good. Good weekend. Did you have a good weekend?
I worked all weekend, so making money. That's not a bad thing. Good advice I got once: you're either at home spending money or at work making money. So I was making some money this weekend.
I don't know. I feel like I'm always at work spending money. Buying lunch is expensive.
Yes. We're just getting a few people rolling in. I was a little late setting up the chat today. My apologies to everyone on that. So thank you to everyone slowly rolling in. We got our buddies Timothy Green, hello, and Illini Ted, some of our usual people out there. I have good news, Becky. I wanted to start out with. I know that everyone held their breath over this weekend. It was very, very, very concerning. It was national headlines everywhere, but they finally captured the zebra that was loose in Western Washington. So everyone, it has a happy ending. The zebra's going to a sanctuary in Montana, but our national nightmare is over. They captured the wild Pacific Northwest zebra. Just out of frame, you can see his best buddy, the Sasquatch, made sure he got home safe, and the Cougars didn't eat him. But we have good news on that front. Were you concerned for the safety of our zebra, Becky?
I was not. I just assumed that the zebra had made its way to Moen's place. And it was on the run for a good while. It could have walked that far.
Yeah, it's a long trek to Ohio, but if anyone can make it there, it's a zebra. I did see some funny comments saying that on the way to ref the Washington spring game, which took place on Friday, which we'll touch on a little bit here.
It was still a good story. It was funny. All those the memes were the best thing.
Our good friend Big Ten Ted is in here. Hello, Ted. How we doing? Still better than the Big Ten refs. We can try. We can hope. I mean, every single conference thinks they have the worst refs in the world, but I would put up the Pac-12 refs against anyone. And unfortunately, the Big Ten has hired several of the former Pac-12 refs to join the conference with the expanded games.
Hopefully they hired the good ones. I mean, there were a couple of good ones. There were a lot of really
a lot of very infamous ones. A few names out there. Every conference has their notorious figures, and they always seem to show up in the biggest moments and want to make the evening about them. But I'm sure with the best conferences assembled going forward, we will only have the top quality refereeing to go along with it.
Correct. I would hope.
Yeah. Friend Illini Ted said Bigfoot wasn't riding. Like I said, just out of shot. Bigfoot, as you know, makes the Pacific Northwest home. Very, very common around here, but somehow we can never manage to get it on film. That's just the way it is.
Bigfoot's blurry. What's his name said that? Famous comedian. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, Bigfoot's just naturally blurry.
Naturally blurry. He was in the shot. You just can't see him. He's blurry.
Yeah, that zebra earned his freedom. Well, the zebra was recaptured along with the other 3 were recaptured originally. It was 4, but they are going to a sanctuary in Montana. They'll have wide open spaces. There's a lot of greenery out there, so don't feel sad for our friend the zebra. But I just thought that was a kind of a fun thing to touch on over the weekend, and I'm going to roll right into it because it's been pretty spicy this weekend from our Coug and Beef friends out there. They were very adamant about beating their chest. They finally got the media deal that the Pac-12 could not. They're very excited that they have all this national exposure, but as many people pointed out, the great irony with it is it's not streaming. It is, in fact, CW and Fox. What do you think about that with the hard pivot that, streaming isn't the answer? We're on national TV, and Washington's going to be on Peacock, who no one watches.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing. I think it's great for them. But if they say nobody watches Peacock, I don't think they've seen the numbers for the CW. And let's just be honest, they're not going to exactly be on Fox. They're going to be on FS1. It's a good. I told you it was going to be a pretty decent deal. The CW gets what they want. They're trying to break into the sports market, and Fox gets that. Like, that kind of tells you that Fox is like, we need some late night stuff at least 3 times this year. So kind of gives you a little hint there on how like Washington and Oregon are gonna.
Yeah,
they're not gonna be playing at like 7:30 all the time. So.
Yeah, Tony, I apologize. I didn't see any specific numbers offhand. We didn't get any details and specifics, whether it is going to be FS1. These are just the announced partners that they're, I don't know if it's that they haven't finalized the exact time slots and money values, but it was agreed in principle that CW and Fox, and look, CW, from everything we read last year, they were pleased with the numbers they got out of the ACC in their limited game. And it feels to me like a tester that they were putting out there. You know, they're dipping their toe into the college football waters, and they said, okay, there's something viable here. You know, they just got to make a reasonable price. And as you said, Oregon State and Washington State, look, they drive reasonable TV viewership, you know, more so than any other Mountain West school. And I understand that's relative to what opponent they're playing, but they can draw some eyeballs to those late night windows, and, you know, Pac-12 After Dark might live on after all.
Yeah. I mean, it'll only be Pac-12 After Dark if like the last place Mountain West school goes into Pullman or Corvallis and beats them. Like, then it'll be true Pac-12 After Dark. But yeah, I mean, the CW is going to show the ACC during the day. They also have golf.
Indeed.
And it's 13 total games. So I'm actually curious, what is the purpose? Outside of like the Pac-12 network is going to be the one that broadcasting the game, because that's the big deal. It's going to be on the CW, but the Pac-12 network's producing it. Is there a reason for the Pac-12 network at this point? Because they're not actually going to have a single football game because of that. Because
I think all the auxiliary content from Pac-12 networks going away. We also obviously I don't know if they're maintaining the other sports coverage. So the Pac-12 network, it never made any money, but their coverage of the Olympic sports was awesome. You could see any sport you wanted any time of day, and it was excellent for that. But you didn't have the football component that was well done to sustain it. So I don't know if that's going to continue for the two schools, but the infrastructure the Pac-12 network has, I believe, will get them a better asking price from CW or even possibly Fox. Fox obviously can produce those 3 games. They don't really need to rely on Pac-12 network, but the CW, I believe, had some kind of similar deal with the ACC where it's a collaboration. It's not like CW is footing the bill for all of the production.
No. And this is a great thing for these two schools. The amount of money that they're going to get paid, and then they're basically paying to broadcast it themselves, produce it themselves, and they're not having to get rid of all that equipment right away. It gives them a really good like shot to see what they can do. And then obviously, if it works out, like, can they carry over and get a bigger contract next time? Because they're at this point they have to build their brands, and I like this on that aspect. They can build their brands. They're going to be on national TV, but yeah, the irony, of course, is like you said, it's not streaming. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about accessibility, regardless if it's streaming or not. And the CW is available virtually everywhere. I don't see that being a problem. The Fox, it's going to be FS1 type thing. And I think Fox has, you know, we've heard rumors of the Fox ESPN merged super streaming option. So I don't know how much that plays into it if they're just trying to get, you know, their foot in the door on that end. But I think the accessibility for the two schools will be pretty high. And you might not have the best matchups, but we've seen them be pretty aggressive in scheduling Power 5 non-conference. I believe Oregon State scheduled Kansas State in Houston, if I'm not mistaken, and Wazoo just scheduled Virginia. So they're certainly trying to get somewhat of Power 5 opponents, you know, decent matchups to sell. And I'd argue that teams like Boise or San Diego State, Air Force, like there's some appeal with teams like that, despite them being in the Mountain West. So I could see some of those matchups being the ones that get picked up for the prime spots.
Yeah, and I think in this case, 13 games, that's pretty much all their home games. The games against Washington and Oregon, those are the games that will not be broadcast. You can almost guarantee the Fox will have those 2 games. But
I'm certain they will, if they'll finagle some way to do it.
Yeah.
Line I said CW isn't really normal college football viewing, but I guess they all have to start somewhere. Yeah, it's a tough market, and just kind of chipping off your piece at the edges is a smart way to go, because if it doesn't pan out, your total investment is relatively low for you to walk away. So it makes sense from the CW's perspective.
Yeah, it all makes sense. It's, like I said, I think Fox will have the 2 games with their former their in-state rivals, and then they're going to have that one. They'll probably, I think they'll have the 1 game between the 2 schools. I think those are the 3 games, and then everything else will be on the CW.
Yeah, if they get first crack at it, it would certainly make sense to get those games.
And I can't see them not wanting those 3 games on Fox. Those are the games that are going to drive up viewers. But I can also see the CW saying, "Hey, we would like those," but like Fox owning the rights to the Big Ten, I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah. We will certainly await the details, and we'll get the exact numbers on that. I'm really interested. I want to see the breakdown of all of the Pac-12 pieces that disperse to the win. How much money are they going to make this year, and then divide that by 12. You can see what the conference was really worth, because I bet you it's more than they were being offered. But that's the reality of college football. You're only worth relative to the conference that you're in. And on a related note, our friend Tony Lashin thinks, what do we think of Big Ten Network? Have you had any viewing on the Big Ten Network recently, Becky?
Oh, I've watched the Big Ten Network all the time. I am a huge Olympic sports person. So for me, watching, for anybody who doesn't know, I played softball growing up. So for me, softball is the sport. That's the one that you can kind of watch on the Big Ten Network. And then, of course, I love watching college basketball. Those games aren't on, they can't put all those games on normal television because there's just too many of them. So I like to watch it for that. And they're really good. What I really love is the commentators are really good. I love the in-studio hosts. I think they're great.
Big Ten, you need to hire you some Yogi Roth. Yes. I love that guy.
Yes. Please hire Yogi Roth.
Please hire Yogi Roth. He was great. The in-studio talent for Pac-12 Network was always great.
God, they had Mike Yam
up there saying stuff, all sorts of stuff. But yeah, Moen, kind of on the same note, Big Ten Network would be great with the new West Coast Regional channel. I could certainly see them setting that up. I mean, that's the premise of our show, is you got the 4 incoming West Coast schools that are kind of a bunch together. And it would make sense to market them as kind of a package. Like, here's the new, you used to have the Western division of the Big Ten, but this is really West. This is far West as far as the Big Ten goes. And I if they don't already have it, they need to have the condensed games. Please give me they called it the Pac-12 in 60. I just watched it the other day before the Washington spring game. They had the Oregon-Washington game, and they condense it all down, rip out all the commercials and everything else, and get you 60 seconds for the whole game. It's great. Give me something like that. And honestly, it's an opportunity. Get some of those classic Big Ten matches. You could even feature a lot of the Rose Bowls. I would love to see 1960 Minnesota versus Washington Rose Bowl. I've never actually watched more than a couple of clips, in person. So it's a huge opportunity to feature games like that. You could have Washington, Michigan from the early 90s, the back-to-back national championship years, one for each team winning it. Those are awesome things, and we do have that connection between the Pac-12 schools and Big Ten, so I really hope that they lean into that and make the most of it. Quick shout out, hello to our friend Glenn Luman. Good morning from the Philippines. Not so sunny here in Seattle. I'm jealous, Glenn, but thank you for being here.
Well, can I just say real quick, I don't really care about anything on the Big Ten Network right now until we see the commercial.
Yeah, give us the flyover commercial.
Give us the flyover commercial.
I would pay for an attendance to a theater ticket to watch it in IMAX. I would love to see that commercial so much. It'd be fantastic.
God, IMAX. Could you imagine? Like, here in Seattle, we have the Cinerama.
Yep.
Or at the Science Center, the Pacific Science Center here in Seattle has this. The screen is like, I don't know, like 30
Yes,
feet
Mondo
tall,
screen and
tall. It's huge.
More audio than a Metallica concert. You got to put it up there. I'd love to see it. But this is an opportunity. The NFL pipes up everything. If you can get away not only with revealing the video and having it be a big deal, revealing the date that the video is going to come out and having that be a big deal. That's what the NFL does. They hype up the release day, then they actually release it, and then another date to give you the full breakdown. So the flyover commercial, just lean into that as hard as you can, because can't wait to have the West Coast included on it. Got some more people filing in. Our good friend the Buckeye Homicero. Hello, how are we doing?
Hello.
We got Shonsky, our favorite Big Ten hater. I'm so glad to see you in here, Shonsky. Appreciate you stopping by. Yeah, I was a little late getting the video up today and setting up the stream, but I appreciate everyone filing in. Moen, they have to change the theme song, We Riot. I know there was a controversy. They had the original song. I forget the name of it off top of head. And then they changed it a couple years in, and there was so much protest from Big Ten fans, they changed it back to the original. But you got to fit it in a 30-second commercial, so the overhead plane is going to be going a little faster in this one. But it'll be very exciting. We've debated what we want to see from each school included in the commercial. Washington has a lot of stereotypes. Oregon, I don't know what you throw up other than the Nike logo and maybe their fancy track facility, but let's get creative with our Ducky friends. Maybe they can just have their, Scrooge McDuck with his money bags for Uncle Phil sitting there.
Giant Nike flag.
Yes, just Nike logo and the O. That's Oregon.
That's it.
All righty. I'll lean into you for this because you've got the analytical mind. What do you take away from the Washington spring game recap? We were the latest one by far. Pretty much everyone else has finished up their spring, but it was a big, exciting event. I had actually never watched a spring game live before, as big a Husky fan as I am, and I think the school did a good job hyping it up.
Yeah, I really liked it. My favorite, the flock to the dock, was hilarious. For those who don't know, Oregon fans decided that they were going to, quote unquote, buy all the tickets.
I don't think it was meant to be literal, but a few Duck fans thought it was.
6 fans showed up in Duck gear to the Washington spring game. I don't even know where to begin with that. I was like, there's been a running joke for years that more Oregon fans live outside of Oregon than in it, and quite a few of them live in the greater Seattle area, I promise you. Oh, yeah. No, they do. A lot of them went to the ones that actually went to Oregon probably live in Seattle or LA or the Bay Area. So it's not like an unusual thing, but it had me laughing when 6 dudes showed up randomly in the crowd, all that purple, and then you just see 6 Duck jerseys. And they lived up to it, but they were pretty embarrassed. No, as far as the game goes, though,
did you see anything promising going into the Big Ten? Because obviously Washington is like a total rebuild project compared to last season.
Yeah, offensive line depth, big issue. It's going to be an issue. They just signed a player from Ohio State today after a player who was from Old Dominion decommitted, but
I'm sure the two are unrelated.
No, I'm sure. They're both offensive tackles. But no, I really, the other big thing that stood out, the defense was like ball hawking. They were everywhere, quick, they're fast, they were physical.
The corners from Arizona are legit, especially a guy named Ephesians Prysock. He's 6'4", he's long, he's going to be able to cover Big Ten receivers. I have no doubt about that.
They definitely plugged up some of the passing lanes with their length. That was great. And I think we need to pause on this, because at this time of year, the defense is almost always ahead of the offense.
Yeah, real quick, Homicero, yes, they did get. we're going to have to work on our Polynesian pronunciation. We should be good at it, but we did get the offensive lineman from Ohio State. He committed today.
Enoch Vimahi.
Yeah.
We
also got Leatu Latu's brother, a tight end from Nevada, which is interesting.
Yeah, because
people up here in Washington still like Latu, and obviously he went 7th in the draft out of UCLA. Or 7th. Or sorry,
16th or 17th. Yeah. 15th. He went right before the Seahawk pick. But also, he was like, after we were talking about all the first round picks, he's like, but I'm a Husky. So he was still a Husky at heart. So we started including a lot.
Yeah, he had teammates on Twitter piping in. But I guess I just bring this up. Obviously, we're Huskies. You know, we were putting our purple hats on today, so bear with us for a minute. But yeah, it's obviously interesting to us, but it's an experiment because Washington's in a completely different position to USC and Oregon for sure. UCLA is a little similar in that you have massive turnover, massive roster turnover, and basically completely new starting units, and you're going into a new conference. Mm-hmm. And it's why I take so much issue with post-spring game power rankings. I don't like them anyway, but this year, especially with all the teams changing conferences, you have no possible way of knowing the top 25 or the power rankings. Like, yes, Ohio State and Oregon are going to be pretty good. That's not hard to discern. But, you know, just the churning of the media machine trying to get content over the summer is a little frustrating. And I've seen people saying Washington might be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. And it's just, you know, you might be right, you might be wrong, but how the heck could you possibly know that?
Yeah, I think for Washington, I think it'll be a little brutal this year stopping the run.
Yeah.
It'll be a little brutal running the ball, but that's a depth issue that they have to address. No, they'll get it addressed, and I'm not too concerned about that, but I think they're going to be able to throw the ball, and I think they're going to be able to stop the pass, which is even crazier to say. But you have schools like USC, their defense looked vastly improved in their spring game.
Yeah, Oregon's did also. They've been
Oregon looked good
after linemen.
I would say, I don't know. Oregon's offense looked horrible, but I think it's because the defense is that darn good. Yeah. So,
and they had a center that was just drafted, I believe, second round. You know, an awesome. They had a really good offensive.
They had a really good team.
Yeah. Washington's was a little better, but it's not like Oregon didn't have turnover.
No. And those are the biggest things. Is I think their offense is way behind their defense because of the talent that's on the defense. You know, and they have a quarterback learning a new system. You can't expect any of that to be a thing. The only game I haven't seen is UCLA's. I didn't even see it on TV, which is weird.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they played it, but the things I'm hearing about UCLA, I think they're going to be really good. I think that they didn't lose anybody. So who they have is who they have. I think they did a great job of securing those guys. My question is, who's the quarterback? I think that's everybody's question.
I'm waiting until summer's over to see and reserve any judgment. But real quick from Lion I'd said, we'll wrap this one up. Somebody put us 15th this year. I saw that one also. I mean, it's a spit in the bucket. Who the heck knows? But what's your realistic expectation going into the season? Just quick take. This is where I think Washington is. Give me a wins and loss total.
I think the ceiling is 9 wins. I don't think they can win more than 9.
Yeah.
I think I have been adamant they're probably going to be 7-5 or 8-4, right there.
Yeah. Sorry to be boring, but Ted, I'm right there with you. I think 8-4 because I'm a little optimistic, especially with a couple of the guys they brought in the past few days. They need a little bit more D-line depth, but Washington's got tough games. They have Oregon, they have USC, they have Michigan at home. Don't think we have Penn State this year. We go at Iowa.
I'm going to Happy Valley this year. We're going.
Oh yeah, we do play Penn State. Also.
Everything there.
Just murder, and teams I believe we play Rutgers also. That's not going to be an easy game either. There are no easy schedules anymore in the SEC or Big Ten. You do not get an off year, but I think 8-4 is possible. That's respectable. That's a 5-4 Big Ten season. 7-5 wouldn't surprise me. To me, it's not a failure if you go 6-6, but go 7-5. That's respectable.
Yeah.
First year, something to build on. Go 7-5 or better, and I would be okay.
I wouldn't even be shocked if they only won 5 games. only
Conundrum
because
Midwest fish fry. I appreciate that.
God, I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
along kind of the same vein of the spring game. I don't know if you saw this, but Southern Oregon University was hosting the Japan High School Football Champions, and for their spring game. What do you think about having an actual opponent for a spring game?
I think it's a good idea. I think it would be great to see like Southern Oregon play at like Oregon or Oregon State, because it gives those guys like, hey, look, we're gonna play in front of 70,000, 60,000 people, whatever. I think if you have an actual like game, it makes the team better. It makes both teams better, but it also gives the fans something like, oh, I want to come out, because it's not a, well, I hate to break it to everybody, it's a glorified practice. That's what they are. It's a scrimmage. Spring game is just a glorified scrimmage that they serve beer and let you be a fan at. Unless you're Wisconsin, then you have to sit in a special section. But I can't get over that. But I like it. I think it's a great idea. Get those like smaller schools out there, get them playing. And let me just say this out loud. You will find the diamonds in the rough playing those schools. You'll find those guys.
Yeah, I ran a poll and had a few people respond here. My whole breakdown was, do you keep spring as is? Kind of just a scrimmage style where it's like not really contact, because the whole thing with going against another team is your injury risk goes up, right? And that's what nobody wants, especially for quarterbacks. My thought was go full contact, but you got the quarterbacks in the obvious jerseys, and it's just touch sack, style against an opponent. I believe that's what they did in this Southern Oregon game. It wasn't full send, but obviously the rabid fans out there just want to see it full send. But think about it. You got Division II, Division III schools. The majority of states have them, like even here in Washington State, which doesn't have a ton of college football. You have like Central Washington or Eastern Washington, an FCS school. But let's say you don't want to play FCS because you may play them, as a non-conference in the fall. Division II, Division III teams would jump at the opportunity to come play against top-level talent.
Yeah, I'm going to say in softball, you see this all the time.
Yeah.
You see, like, they schedule smaller schools. Washington, for instance, has played Central Washington. They've played Seattle. They'll play Seattle U, which is technically a D1 school with them, but they'll play those games in the fall, as like their fall warm-up. I think
almost preseason of sorts.
Yeah, and I would say full send, no, because nobody wants to see anybody get hurt. I think full contact.
Your $1 million NIL quarterbacks, you're not going to risk that. But
I mean, I would even be happy with, like, say, removing the offensive lineman and just go, hey, you know what? Let's do 7-on-7 full contact. Quarterback can't run or anything like that, but 7-on-7 full contact, like with receivers and corners.
Just a skills display, basically.
Yeah, that would be fun. Like, that would actually be fun, because it gives those guys like a little more competition, and there's very little separation between a D1 and like a D2 athlete. It's very, very slim.
Yeah.
And a lot of these D2 guys played at schools like Washington, Oregon, and UCLA. They just couldn't, they just didn't get, picked up when they left. They just took the best school they could get.
Yeah, and I definitely think there's something to be. I hate spring game attendance numbers. It's one of my pet peeves about college football. Is that the guy this year talked to Kalen DeBoer and said, "Oh, we got 70,000 here in Tuscaloosa for the spring game. Washington has like 10 people." It's like, yes, because there is in fact more to do in Seattle, Washington than Tuscaloosa, Alabama in the middle of May. You are correct, sir. And I get it. It's like it's just another thing fans use to throw out there. Yeah. Washington had, I believe, significantly higher spring attendance this year, but it's nowhere near the other schools. But when you go to game day, 68,000 in the stands. So I digress. I'm saying having a real opponent may actually put some juice into that spring game.
I'm like the spring numbers thing. I was like, first off, the photo that was used in that was like before anything started. Like, it was a couple of hours before they actually did anything, because they opened up the gates like 2 hours before, because it's spring football. It's just like they try to do, even though it's a spring game, The stadium still does some of their operations to see how things work, and they'll implement new things and they'll test them at the spring game. People don't realize that, but that's what Washington does. They test their stuff at those games. But when it comes to like the numbers, it's like, again, like you said, like they used Seattle last year, and I was like, do you know what was going on in Seattle that day last year? There was a Sounders home game, a Mariners home game, Kraken playoff game. The OL Reign were playing at home right before the Sounders. There was a traffic thing with 520 because it was closed. And for those who don't know, 520 is the floating bridge that goes from the east side across the lake, and it goes right next to the stadium. Montlake was closed, the bridge.
Yeah. It is what it is.
It was a lot. Metro. Yeah, it was a lot of stuff. And everybody's like, oh, and then to top it off, I had to Google this. It was like 85 degrees. You get an 80-degree day in Seattle this early in the year. Yeah. Nobody's going to a football game.
Yeah. Scott Schrader, our Nebraska friend, go to 7-on-7, just like Colorado's spring game. You're not lying there. We will talk about Colorado. Believe me, we will touch on the Days of Our Lives episode unfolding in Boulder right now. But I saw a little bit earlier Scott Schrader and Clay Johansson, that's the wrong one. I believe you asked about UCLA, if I'm not mistaken, up here. There it is. And this is kind of tied into a Husky note, but I think it's a good segue for us that we can touch on UCLA. And it's that quarterback Demarcus Davis from Washington transferred to UCLA. And normally that wouldn't really be too big of news, but Washington had 2 transfer freshman quarterbacks, both 4 stars, both highly recruited, and it always felt inevitable that one of them would have to leave.
Yep.
And he goes to UCLA. That makes them better. They obviously had their 5-star transfer to Oregon to be depth. But to me, this is speaking to the portal isn't really dismantling rosters unless there's coach turnover. You're just seeing depth go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And UCLA is going to benefit from him. He's a really talented kid. I don't think he's ready to start. But what do you take about these the high school quarterbacks? You know, you can't just ferret these guys away and hide them on your roster for the most part, unless you're throwing crazy NIL money at him. Yeah. What do you think about kind of the dispersal of talent? Is it a good or bad thing overall?
I think it's a good thing. We have already seen it. We saw Washington and Michigan in the national title game. When was the last time you saw a non-SEC opponent in the national title game? I'll tell you, it was 10 years ago when Oregon played Ohio State. But
with no SEC teams, you mean?
Yeah, no SEC school whatsoever in the national title game. It's been 10 years. Once in 10 years. This is a good thing. But like you said, this kid came in. There was another freshman who came in as well. They battled. He lost. He didn't get the reps.
This is just for the backup job.
Yeah, because they're not starting. Like, well, and this is the thing. The kid that stayed at Washington, from what people have said and have heard, is pushing Will Rogers. Like, this kid might be better than Will Rogers, who's I think a top 10 all-time SEC passing leader.
Yeah, he's numbered. Will Rogers was, after 4 years at Mississippi State, was number 2 in total yardage passing in the SEC. A lot of that came from the volume of passing because he played in Mike Leach's system. But he's capable.
He's capable. And if you got the game is not going to go fast for this kid. For Rogers, the game's not going to go too fast. He has experience. He's played the Alabamas. He's played the Auburns. He's played the Georgias. He's going to be fine. But no, this is great because it gives these kids, 1, a chance to go play somewhere else, and 2, it gives schools like JMU got a 4-star kid because he had to because he was transferring from Washington because he was going to lose time as a starting quarterback himself when Will Rogers transferred in.
Yeah. Malachi Nelson, 5-star, goes to Boise, of all places. And that's a great spot for him. They're a talented offensive team, but that's something you never saw before portal.
Never saw, never will see. And this is why we keep saying, like, it's free agency, and it's the best kind of free agency because now anybody can get good at any given moment. And you're muted.
Apologies, my daughter, as always, during my streams is quite upset that I'm not spending time with her. UCLA is going to be interesting watches here. Fostering talent remains to be seen if he can actually coach. Yeah, it does. I mean, he's an alumni, so it's a feel-good story for the fans. But, you know, you like to see what a guy's made of. And it's weird to see guys like that get their very first ever shot at a major P5 school. But that's the world we live in now. I just got to touch on this as kind of an aside. I've seen a couple of comments. Is Autzen Stadium getting expanded or built a new one? It will get expanded. It's not currently set up for it, but there's really no, I mean, they could put it somewhere else, but if you've never been to Oregon's campus, which I assume most of chat hasn't, it's pretty much right centrally in campus. It's a good spot for it. It's like halfway built into a dirt mound on one side. They could easily expand it as big as they want, but the population of Eugene outside of the school is relatively small. Like, they genuinely would struggle to fill a 70,000 seat stadium if they built it. It's just, you know, it's just the reality of a lot of their alumni don't like Eugene is a small town, and it's at least an hour and a half away from Portland, which is the closest metro. Like, it's not necessarily easy for a lot of alumni to make it to every game. They do sell the 50,000 seats that they do have.
They do. The other thing, like, anybody who's not been there, you have to walk across the river to get to the stadium. So it's like, it's not like you can just like walk in. Like, if you've ever been to the Horseshoe, it's pretty much like it's got a whole thing around it. Like, the whole campus is right there. No, Autzen sits next to a river. You have to cross a bridge in order to park. You have to cross that bridge, get in, you know, to get there.
Yeah, there are limitations for sure.
Yeah. And the city, Eugene, I love Eugene. Don't get me wrong. I love Eugene. I think it's a nice little quaint town. But it is a true college town. It is very much, the campus is right there. You know, it's not technically even on campus, I don't think. I don't think it's classified as being on campus. Yeah. But that community is very like, it's like, you know, everything's squished in. I don't know what they would do. They'd have to create more parking, and I don't know where they'd get that from.
It's like any college town. It's built around the school itself. For our friend Illini Ted there, I saw the renovation of Ryan Field, and it's been completely stripped down to the studs. Here it is for you right there. That is all that remains of the once great home of the Northwestern Wildcats, Ryan Field. It was quite a pretty stadium in its own way, despite, you know, no one really showing up. And it's kind of crazy to see these, like, we have this idea that college football is about history and tradition and pageantry, but I think some of that's kind of going away, and some of these stadiums that in a previous era where money wasn't the bottom line, they might have survived or been renovated or changed in some way. You're just going to see some new mega stadiums go up with all the fancy luxury boxes. It's getting more NFL like, and I don't necessarily love it, even though I understand.
Yeah, but I mean, I love what they're building. Ryan Field needed to be remodeled. It was old, old.
It needed a change.
It needed it. It needed the
You're in Chicago.
But
you got to have somewhere. Yeah. I mean, you're the hub for the entire Big Ten. You got to show off what you got a little bit.
And I mean, like, in this point, you know, the Bears want to renovate, you know, Soldier Field now and like create like a domed stadium. Well, with that stadium being rebuilt the way it is, there you go. Because if people don't know this, but Soldier Field is the smallest stadium in the NFL. It only holds like 60-something thousand people. Like less than 65,000 people. So the new Ryan Field could technically be their home field if necessary, because it's NFL-esque. So they're doing a couple of smart things with that. Yeah. But
they're playing on their soccer field by the lake for this upcoming season, which I believe is 5,000 seats.
Yeah.
So they might have a sellout, you know, good for them.
Yeah. They're probably better off like asking to play at Soldier Field.
Yeah, we got we got some fun chat going on there of an aside. I don't know. General Booty, if you saw, probably one of the best names in the sport, is in the portal. And I told our good friend Immaculate Mr. Hawkeye that if Iowa gets General Booty as their quarterback, I would love it, because then I'd be able to say that your quarterback is Booty regardless of how good or bad the offense actually is. It's just a factual statement. Shonsky with his opinion about the D2. He doesn't think the D2, D3 schools would come for a paycheck in the spring. I don't know, because you could literally finance their whole season's budget for one game. Like, you don't think Washington could cut them, a $200,000 check? Yeah. And it's not like you're just destroying each other. You're not full sending it. Like, there's still limitations. And it's a chance for them to test themselves. Because think about it. In your spring game, you're not necessarily number one guys on number one guys. You got mixed rotating guys in. You're trying out different players. You might have some of your depth guys in. You're not necessarily full sending your best squad. So I think D2 and D3 schools might actually consider it. That's just my opinion.
I mean, it's a paycheck, $200,000. Like, think of how these schools are. All schools have to pay for all their sports somehow. That how is called football. Football pays for everything. Whether or not, like, Kansas fans would like you to believe the basketball pays for, no. Football's the moneymaker. It doesn't matter the school. Football's the moneymaker. So, yeah, they would. And in the lower levels, football is absolutely the only moneymaker. So it would be great.
Yep. And real quick, I want to thank all of our channel members and subscribers. If you'd like to become a new apologies, my daughter doesn't like me reading that, but we're going to do it anyway. If you'd like to consider becoming a channel member, here is how you can do so, and we'll talk about all of the benefits, because our guys have been pumping out some absolutely awesome videos for our members.
Want to become a member of the College Football Mafia family? Simply select the Join button from our homepage. There are several options with their own unique benefits to choose from. You can also set yourself to auto-accept gifted membership by selecting the gift settings options as shown.
And we have had some awesome new content coming out. We still have Louisville to the Big 12, which I believe is going to be a member exclusive. And Wild Ute has sung his praises for Louisville, but I would absolutely encourage you to go do that. We have Notre Dame to the Big 10. It's a fit. But I got to say, I was quite shocked when he actually ran the numbers, what it looks like. We have Moen's kind of magical time warp, where in 1994, you end up with Notre Dame in the Big 10. He took our, what if alternate reality idea and ran with it. And our most recent one for our members, NC State to the Big 12. That's one that's, you always see it mentioned. And how good is it really? The Big 12 is still primed to absorb some of those ACC teams, but are they actually a fit? Is it actually worth taking them? We live in a college football era where you don't have to just be kind of okay. You have to raise the median or match it. You have to be above that average level in generating revenue. And it's becoming tougher and tougher, because by that same metric, that means you're bringing in more money than half of the teams that are already there. That's a tough bar to meet.
That is a tough bar, but
it's the world we live in. I don't know. And speaking of people trying to boost up how much money they're doing for not necessarily their schools, but themselves, our good friend Shedeur Sanders out there. And this was probably my favorite. We'll touch on the drama, but this was one of my favorite parts, because the community notes is absolutely brutal here. Saying Shedeur's looking like Patrick Mahomes out here throwing against basically a dog in not Pats. And said, Big 12 has never seen a quarterback of this caliber before. And the community notes absolutely bodies them, saying that Patrick Mahomes, in fact, did play in the Big 12.
Did he? He was a Red Raider. I thought
he was a Red Raider. He was indeed.
What was that? I thought they played in the Southwest Conference still.
Once upon a time, they certainly did.
They did.
But my goodness.
How old is Patrick Mahomes now? 50?
Yeah, ancient history, people have forgotten about that kind of stuff. And it's a darn shame to see one of the greats not remembered like Patrick Mahomes.
No, that community notes had me dying when I saw it. I was like, really? Did they really do that to the guy?
Well, let's touch on the bigger portion of that. What did you think about the whole drama between, I forget the young man's name, but he transferred away from Colorado and basically said that Deion was a terrible mentor, did not look after his players, and didn't encourage them. And Shedeur was talking all sorts of smack online, and you got this back and forth. But the one that got me was the kid basically trying to talk smack to Shedeur on Twitter. And Deion himself, the head coach, comes in and basically says, "Oh, you were nothing," and posts up his stats from last year and tries to make him look like a clown. Like, the players doing it is one thing. I think it's pretty petty, but you're the head freaking football coach, and you're trying to clown on dudes and they're like between 18 and 21 years old. You're a grown man, Deion, and you're supposed to be prime and Mr. this and that. Like, what on earth are you doing?
I saw that and I immediately was like, hey, Deion, let's post your stats for your first year at Colorado. How'd that go?
It's funny you should mention that. It's funny you say that, Becky. We just so happen to have some stats from and wouldn't you know it? He signed everyone under the moon, 5 stars, 4 stars, NIL. We're getting Louis, 61% no longer on the roster in 1 year. And according to him, it's because they weren't good enough. That's what he'll say. That's what he did say online. They didn't meet the bar. But you look at all the guys they're bringing in this year, they're not quite so highly ranked as the guys the year previous.
No, the first year he went for the stars. He looked at, what were they rated coming out of high school? He didn't look at what they do in college. This year he's looking at what they did in college and bringing them in because he had an O-line problem last year that he has not yet addressed.
Still hasn't
addressed it.
Yep.
And in fact, your offense went from really, really good to stale. And that guy you basically fired as an offensive coordinator before it went stale. And now he's the head coach of San Diego State. And they're basically going to play that offense there. By the way, that offense worked at Kent State. Just ask Georgia, Oklahoma, and Washington. That offense was brutal to stop.
Yeah, it's certainly effective when you have the pieces in place.
There comes a point where it's like, look, you don't have to make fun of the kid. You don't have to dog the kid. The kid's at Austin Peay for a reason. He's happy there. It's where he felt comfortable. But, he just called you out on the fakeness that you're fake behind the scenes, essentially, is what he's saying. I don't know him. I don't, obviously I'm not there. I don't know what's going on, but it came across like, I genuinely believe in the kid. I genuinely want the kid to do this. And then to rip the kid because he's like basically calling out the problems that we can't see behind the scenes. By the way, Kid is not the first one to say something about Deion. There was a 5-star corner who transferred who was like, I thought I'd get developed and I didn't. So
Komani Jackson, I believe his name was. I might be wrong on that, but a 5-star cornerback.
Yep. He was like, I thought it was going to get developed. I thought I was going to learn from the best corner, the best corner to ever play the game.
Yeah.
And
there are rumors that he did not remember some of his players' names, not walk-ons, recruited scholarship guys that were paid good NIL checks that he couldn't even remember their names. And a lot of the memes were made about the fact that he put their Twitter handles on the backs of their jerseys, etc. And it's like, I just think it's a Deion thing that he is so in his own world that like normal people problems no longer register to him. And our friend Clay brings up, I'm okay with the 61%, but the scouting department should do better. I don't know if you're a Buffs fan. We're not trying to totally dunk on you. It has nothing to do with Boulder or Colorado. It's just Deion that we have a problem with because of the way he conducts himself. And I think that this churn and burn situation, it doesn't matter. It makes the recruiting numbers completely pointless because, we brought in all these 5 stars. They're never going to see the field for you, or they're barely going to see the field for you, and then they're going to transfer out the next season. That's not continuity. You can't build a system like that if you're completely reteaching it every year. It's like every year you're a brand new head coach, and I don't think his game is going to last too much longer if he continues like he is, and as soon as his sons are done, I think he's out. Whether he gets another job after this or wants one, who knows? But this is not sustainable.
I don't think he's going to leave when his kids are gone. You can see like the kids that he fully believes are going to be great. He genuinely invests in. Travis Hunter is a good example of that. Not his kid.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Travis Hunter cannot block for him.
The place kicker that came from Jackson State, the Latino kid, I can't remember his name. He brought that kid with him from Jackson State and immediately was like, no, you're gonna kick for me because I trust you. And he genuinely likes these kids.
Yeah.
So I don't
That's
think he's going to.
That's a good situation that could come from his portal madness.
I don't think he's going to leave when the kids are done, but I will say this. He said his kid was going to be a top 5 draft pick.
Yeah.
That might have been pushing it. And I mean, like Colorado, let's say it out loud. The Big 12 is loaded this year. Loaded.
It's very even across the board.
People go, oh, well, Oklahoma State didn't have a single player drafted because the whole team came back. The whole team came back. They got 21 out of 22 starters back. And the one guy who didn't, I think it was like a kicker or punter. They don't get drafted. So it's like, they're good. Okay. Who else is coming back? Oh, pretty much all of the Utah team. That was pretty good. Oh, and they're bringing back some quarterback named Cam Rising. So they're going to be solid. Kansas State's going to be good. Arizona's bringing back virtually most of their offense. They're going to be good.
Although they don't have Jaden Rashada anymore.
Yeah.
Which is
tough. But they're going to be fine. All like those teams are really good. And then you have schools like Texas Tech who are bringing back some dudes. You have schools like, Kansas. Kansas is bringing back what was the preseason Big 12 Player of the Year.
Yeah, the Big 12 to me is the ultimate.
Yeah.
Like, if you're just a casual fan and like you have your team, but you're maybe not super invested in others, like I can get that way sometimes. I don't watch a ton of other games. I watch Washington, depending on the week or how busy it is. If you just want to sit down and not think about it and just watch good ball or just an entertaining game, turn on Big 12. Just turn on Big 12. The likelihood of you having a really entertaining game, even between two quote bad teams, is really high. Like the blowout rate in the Big 12 should be a lot less than other conferences this year.
Should be.
And I think even in the games that are totally kind of bad in a sense, you'll probably see shootouts like old school Big 12 because there's quite a lot of offense in that conference this year.
Yeah, there's a ton. And I mean, like, I'm not saying Colorado will lose 10 games. They're not. I don't think they're going to go 4-8 this year. I think they can go 6-6 or 7-5.
Yeah, them being the favorites to win the conference is a joke, though.
Yeah, this is not. And let me just say this: this is not a season in which you go, okay, well, the Pac-12 last year was loaded, right? We know it was good.
Yeah,
it was really, really good, and they were going to absolutely struggle, and then they did. That's not this year. Like this year is like they've got a system in place now. They've recruited a little better. They've been coaching kids. The questions that we have to ask now is, did they catch up to anybody in the Big 12? Because they're right now, I'd put them right in the middle. I'm not going to put them at the top. I'm not going to put them at the bottom. They're right around where like BYU is, like kind of like in the middle.
Yeah. Our friend Shonsky, he's a BYU faithful out here. Oklahoma State, Utah, and Kansas State. That seems to be the general consensus. If you had to separate the layers, those seem the teams, they've got the quarterback, they've got the coaching, they've got the depth that are really set up. And honestly, based on their their performances last season, and they didn't have a ton of turnover, like Oklahoma State was getting clowned on because they didn't have guys drafted. It's like they're returning like 20 or 21 out of 22 starters. Of course, they didn't have a ton of guys drafted. Ollie Gordon is still an awesome running back. And like, that's what we're talking about. Like the firepower and depth is there in the Big 12 that it's really going to be a shootout the whole year. I don't know what that translates to for a playoff run. I've seen some comments with that. I believe someone asked earlier who I think out of the new Big 10 schools can make the playoff. I think it's more or less just Oregon because I think getting more than Oregon and Ohio State in a playoff will be tough.
No, I think, and I
maybe Penn State, Michigan, Iowa, they're kind of in there.
So we know 5 teams. We can basically, we know the Big 10 champ, the SEC champ, the Big 12 champ, the ACC champ, and then we'll have the
Big 10 and SEC runners up.
Well, and then we'll have the G5, whoever that is, G5 champ, essentially, right? So that's 5 spots. Now you're taking, there's 7 more. I'm not
for sure. I think you'll see 3 of the 4 runners up probably also make it.
You're going to see the runners up make it, probably 3 out of the 4. And when we say 3 out of 4, that's going to come down to like the ACC and Big 12 runner up. because the SEC and Big Ten runner-ups are getting in, like guaranteed.
Yeah. Unfortunately, with the bias, I think if the
Yeah.
ACC and champion and runner-up are FSU and Clemson,
They're
then
both
you're going to
in.
see both of them in just because that's the way it goes. And I think that would kick the Big 12 champ or runner-up out. But it could not. They could put in all the runners-up. I think it really depends. Like if the Big 12 is that competitive top to bottom, you can't Pac-12 yourself and have your champion have like 2 losses. That will hurt your case to having multiple teams in the playoff. You have to actually have 1 or 2 teams really stand out and elevate themselves. And for years, the Pac-12 didn't, so they were left out of the playoff. That would be my worry in the Big 12 is as competitive as it is top to bottom, you can't start eating more than a couple losses.
Yeah. I mean, like you're talking about once we get past the runners up, you're talking about probably 2-3 lost teams in the SEC and the Big Ten that they have to go up against.
Yeah.
That's where it kind of gets that. And that's where, like, I think we've all said it gets sketchy quickly. And I'm not saying anything negative about Big 12 or ACC. This is the world we're in. And I feel like a 3-loss Michigan or a 1 or 2-loss Kansas State.
Yeah. It'll be some debate like that.
It's going to come down to that debate. And like
we're going to see the TV networks rear their ugly head again and put their thumb on the scale. And it's unfortunate. I'm glad we have the expanded playoff so that as crappy as it is to see a runner-up left out, there's no debate that the champions are in. And we'll all be pissed, and there will be sports talk radio will talk on about it forever. But I think we can all sleep a little easier with just like, hey, win and you're in. Win your conference, no matter what conference that is, you will get in.
Yeah,
just win and get in.
Win and get in. Like, and let me say this: Notre Dame is an independent. If they only lose 1 game or go undefeated, they're in. Like, they'll get in. That's not a G5 spot. That is, if they finish a very specific way, they get in automatically.
Well, they do play usually a fairly strong schedule.
They're going to play a good schedule. They obviously will have, USC, Stanford on there.
Stanford.
I think they have Clemson on the schedule again this year.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Clemson's like some great team, but they're usually good. They're going to have a good team. That and let me just say this: they have Riley Leonard, kid from Duke who transferred there, play quarterback. They're going to be really, really good. So they're that. So let's just say that we've already given away, 8 spots. Now getting back to the 4. Like,
as the season shapes up more, I think I would love to do it. Once we get through, I think I always call it the preseason, even though it isn't, but the non-conference season, I think that's when you can really start to make your playoff predictions and see how this shapes out.
I think like once you hit week 6, week 7, like that literal halfway point, now we know this is because this is who left, this is who's a surprising team, and this is who's underperformed. You get a good gauge about the halfway point.
It's exciting though, because think about it. In previous years, by week 6, 80% of the country is done. They're not fighting for a playoff anymore. That's not true. Like half of the teams will still probably be alive for the CFP, and that's awesome. That is the positive part of this. Despite all the other downsides,
this is what they wanted. This is literally what the whole purpose of this was for. Was to create this drama, because now we're idiots and we will suck it up and we will pay for it.
I love it. I love it.
Like, I love it, but at the same time, I'm like, man, I can't
think about it. If you had CFP aspirations in a previous season and you ate that second loss, you were done. You were done. Like, 2 losses. Well, there goes our season. We're fighting for the, Fight Hunger Bowl or the Pinstripe Bowl or the whatever.
Let's just use last year. Last year.
Oregon had an awesome season.
Oregon had a great season. They're in now. The 2 losses, 1 team.
That Oregon team is 100% in the playoff.
Yeah, Florida State, same thing.
Where, if we had the 12-team playoff last year, Oregon is 1,000% in with that resume and likely a high seed.
Yeah, like they're all in. Like, this is great. Like, Ohio State in, Missouri in, you start after that, you kind of start getting a little sketchy. But like
The
somebody was going to have
FSU
to
would
play.
not be a debate.
No, there would be none of this. What we would be talking about was FSU should have gotten FSU would have gotten a bye because they would have been one of the top 4. Because we'd have to throw Washington and Michigan, right? Like they would have gotten a bye.
Yeah.
They would have absolutely gotten a bye.
I'm choosing to see the positive in it, but
I see the positives. I see the
negatives.
negatives. I see the negatives.
Yeah, we'll get to that bridge when we get there as the season goes on. Touching back on some comments I missed throughout the show real quick. Our friend Moan at the beginning, if they changed the theme song to the flyover commercial, we riot. Yeah. I'm certain you would because it already happened once. So, maybe they just got to slow down the tempo a little bit and stretch out the flight. Our friend Timothy Green, we touched on this in our previous shows. If you've not seen our others, they're archived on the CFB Mafia channel. You can go into the live tab and watch our old shows. We brought it up. The horrible Oregon Nike tree court is finally going bye-bye. And knowing Oregon, because they have no taste, they'll replace it with something worse. But until then, we can all hope that they go with something more aesthetic than horrible tree vomit.
Maybe they'll do what Wazoo did and put Seattle on their court.
Stranger things happen every day. Yeah. And maybe a last one for us to touch on before we get out of here. But Tony, Northwestern versus Washington, first Big Ten game. Are we going? I am not going, but how do you think that'll pan out in our very first ever Big Ten contest?
I mean, I'm going.
The Purple Bowl of all things.
The Purple Bowl. I'll be there. I'll be at the game. I don't know. Northwestern's improved. But was last year more of a fluke, or is last year more of their reality?
Yeah, the pressure, the pomp and circumstance, and going into it's a Big Ten matchup. It's not a non-conference. We played Michigan State the last couple of years, and it felt kind of special because it's like, Big Ten. It's a Rose Bowl type. Mini Rose Bowl is kind of how I thought of it. And now that's every week. That's every week now. It's going to be very, very strange.
The weird thing is going to be the bowl games. When all of a sudden Washington's playing Northwestern and like some, the Las Vegas Bowl.
Yeah, the bowl alignments are good because we're keeping the Pac-12 alignments and we're going to have possible conference game rematches. It's very bizarre. I hope we get something like the Alamo Bowl because I always liked playing those Big 12 teams. That was always a lot of fun. Despite having nightmares against the game versus Baylor and Oklahoma State over the years, we've had some bad run-ins in the Alamo Bowl, but they're always fun. I
was there for the Baylor game. That was not only fun but heartbreaking, and
Our friend Scotty Schrader saying Sergeant Pickles better watch for Eastern Michigan. Hey, you never know what you're going to get out of some of these teams. I have no shame in admitting that Washington dropped the game to the University of Montana a few years back. Anything is possible. Just ask Michigan and App State.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like, by the way, that game was it's going to be a fun one. And it was originally scheduled because DeBoer coached there.
It was, yeah. That was a big part of it.
That was a big part of it. But I mean,
it's a Midwest team, and you get a little bit of that, Big Ten flavor-ish coming in. Honestly, I could see us scheduling a lot more of those types of teams for non-conference.
I mean, Scott should watch out for Colorado, though. They're going to Lincoln. Should watch out. No, I mean, these games are all great in the non-conference, and like you said, any crazy thing can happen after watching Montana.
Scott, just for you, I'll touch on this as Becky makes kind of her whatever your final summation.
No, I'm good. If I get into my tangent on the Montana Jimmy Lake era, I will go insane.
Well, it's been mentioned before that was a mixed emotion day for me because in addition to the University of Washington, I support the Montana Grizzlies.
Traitor.
Yeah.
Traitor.
Hey, I was born in the great state of Montana, so you can't hate me. And that is, I do have a cousin who's an alumni, and I'm allowed to have two teams because they're in different conferences at different levels. That's my stance on that.
Traitors.
Yeah. Tony Lashin, big plays the Mac. Welcome aboard, man. You should get you some Eastern Washington in your life. They're a lot of fun. The Fighting Cooper Cups of Eastern Washington playing at Minnesota.
They used to be a lot of fun. They're not a lot. They don't have that high powered offense
They
anymore.
can be. They can be.
But the high powered offense is no longer there. They try to make it work at, of all places, Cal, and Cal can do it.
My one last thing is going to be, there was talk of expanding bowl games and the playoffs and that. I think bowl games are dying, but I saw this news today from our good buddy Immaculate posting it up, and my, oh my, this is worth the watch. This is like,
it's going to be great.
The next level from the Pop-Tart Bowl in terms of gimmicky reasons to watch. The Snoop Dogg sponsored Arizona Bowl presented by Gin and Juice. And I don't know. I'm curious if we see more of this kind of thing where the bowl games become kind of gimmicky and fun, but like there's a legitimate reason to watch them, because I think teams not being able to turn down bowl games is pretty silly. I think they should be able to turn down bowl games without penalty, because I don't want to see a team that is going to this game and they're going to sit all their players. Let the MAC teams or the G5 teams or the whoever, if your team is actually invested and, you know, it's a celebration, maybe it's a team that normally doesn't get to go to a bowl. That's a big thing for them.
It's a good thing.
You know, let teams play that actually want to be there, because people will watch those games. They want to watch teams that give a crap. You know, that's the truth. So if we have to see more influencers or media people or other weird gimmicks to kind of save bowl season, you know, it's better than the alternative where they just become unwatchable.
Who saw Snoop Dogg saving bowl season? Not me.
Yeah, Snoop Dogg saves Christmas / bowl season.
Gin and Juice Bowl. I just want to call it the Gin and Juice Bowl so bad.
Yeah, one heck of an after game celebration.
I mean, the Pop-Tart Bowl had the best thing ever.
Yes,
like the live cooking of the mascot. Yeah, it was
something to behold.
He didn't get murdered; he committed suicide.
Yeah. All right, Becky. Well, what is your one last thing as we sign off here for the Monday?
Last thing, we're basically in the off season now. Teams are gonna essentially just be doing their off season training. I will say this: teams are over their. A lot of teams are over their scholarship allotments. They have to figure it out. They don't have to figure it out right now. They don't have to figure it out later. They're going to continue to add guys. And then you're going to see weird things like kids commit and then decommit. And then because another kid came in who's better. This is the day and age that we're in. Just let it kind of roll here, see how things go, and don't be upset. And I never tweet at or like posts by recruits or anything like that. I never do it because just I find it funky and weird, getting funky. But you're gonna have these days where it's like, oh, how is my rival getting better? How are they getting better? How is it? Breathe.
Breathe. Let it all come out in the wash, and by September,
they are not
a good idea.
They are not recruiting kids like they used to, where they just wanted talent. Because they're essentially paying kids now, they're going to treat it like NFL free agency. I think you're seeing it at a school like Washington, who could have brought in tons of players, hasn't. But the players they have brought in fit the scheme. And that's what coaches have to do. They have to now find players that fit their scheme. You can't just go out and get the best 5-star kids. So don't be upset. Don't be anxious. Just kind of let things go. Everything will be okay. And just realize, like,
breathe. I heard it described by someone in a good way as far as the portal is, you can either cast a wide net and try and draw everybody in, or you can cast a tight net, and the ones you do bring in, you're probably going to land. And I think that's the differing strategies between, for example, a team like Oregon, a team like Washington. And yes, they have more NIL money than they know what to do with, and that's a big part of it. But, you know, the portal giveth and taketh away, and I think that's kind of my final thought. The good news is that if they haven't declared already, then they are where they are. So let's be thankful that there are some limitations left in place, as small as they are for portal season. And
you know, they're kids. They're 18. They want to get paid. There are 130 plus schools in D1 football at the FBS level. that means there are over 1,000 kids. That's it at that level. Out of 1,000, only 270 players every year get drafted. Oh,
Yep.
Don't forget, that includes players at lower levels who tend to get drafted too. So you're talking about 5,000 people total, and only 300 can get drafted. Like, these kids want to get paid because they don't know if they're ever going to make that next level. So don't fault the kid, fault the system.
Yeah. Well, we will see what happens, and I think the news over the summer will be far more legal looking. We didn't quite have time to touch on the NCAA settlement, but I know the guys are covering it in depth this week. So please catch all of our other shows as they scroll across here at the bottom. And my final thought, I'm along the lines of Illini Ted. How will I watch the bowl game? Laid back with my mind on my money, and my money on my mind.
Yes.
Words to live by, Illini Ted. Thank you for that. And from all of us here at Big West Mafia and College Football Mafia, thank you for stopping by. I've been Sergeant Pickles with my fantastic host, Becky Go Huskies. Have a good evening, everybody.